What's happening, people? I'm back in my hometown of Edmonton after a jam-packed 2 days in Vancouver with Kiss for the kickoff show of the End of the Road World Tour. As you guys know by now, I was in attendance for this historic performance of epic proportions. And we're not going to divulge my thoughts just yet. We're going to jump into that. When I found out that Kiss was starting off their tour in Vancouver, BC, which is relatively close to me, it was immediately immensely important for me to go down there and to be a part of this show and to witness this show. Firstly, because Kiss is something that's been a part of my life since I was probably the age of 5. And by the age of 6 or 7, my mother walked me into the CD store, recommended me a Kiss Greatest Hits, said she thought I'd really, really like them. Damn, she had good taste. And put me onto it. And ever since then, it was history, or as Gene would say, Paul would say, Kiss-tory. So they've been a very meaningful part of my life. I saw them for the first time now 10 years ago, 2009 in Halifax. Since then, I've traveled to see them in Toronto, Edmonton, and Vancouver. With family, I've got to meet family from going to these various cities due to the events surrounding them. And the underlying point here, folks, is that Kiss has been a huge, integral part of my life and mostly my childhood growing up. They have done incredible things for me. They've done incredible things for my family. Not only that, but their music and everything has meant so much. You guys get the idea. So it was just very important for me to go out to this. So I immediately went out and booked the travel accommodations, the plane tickets, and everything to go down for 2 days. So my plan was to come in the day before the concert, potentially do an interview with a member of Kiss if they had the time. I did get in contact with somebody from the Kiss camp, and they simply said that they don't have the time for the beginning of the tour. And I thought that they might be doing some press because oftentimes groups like Black Sabbath just did it, where they opened up their tour and they did a big press run on the first date. But some bands, they lock it down because they want to concentrate. They want to have time for pre-production, have all their meetings and do everything they need to do. And I just completely respected that, so I thought it was completely fine. So I came in a day early, and then now when I had booked my tickets, there was no announced opener for Kiss. And after I'd booked my accommodations, they announced David Garibaldi, the performance painter, as their opener. And I thought it was really interesting, so I immediately fired off an email to see if I could interview him right when I even heard it was rumored. Because I just said if he might even be in Vancouver, I have no clue if he will be. I just want to take a chance and see if he'll come on the podcast, because it would be really, really interesting. And I ended up landing that interview. So it went very, very well. It is up now on YouTube. So coming into this trip, I knew that I had that to look forward to, and we were going to have some really cool content. So we flew into Vancouver. We met up with my comedian friend, Tommy Campbell. Shout out to him. He's a great guy. He took us out to some beautiful viewpoints over in Vancouver. And we were sort of just talking about the concert and, just talking about our Kiss history. And really talking about what we hoped the band would play and what we really hoped the band would do. At that point, I really had no clue what to expect. There had been rumors also of other members coming out and doing sort of a performance or any sort of appearance where Ace Frehley were to come out or Peter Criss were to come out, or who knows who could have made an appearance. I guess Paul recently just ruled out that Vinnie Vincent will never be back. So I guess we know that. That tends to make some sense to me. But we weren't sure about Ace or Peter. Now, leading up to this show, things were looking so good, and Gene Simmons actually did an interview where he said that Peter and Ace were welcome to come out on the End of the Road World Tour, and if they didn't, it wasn't because of them being Gene and Paul, preventing them from doing it. So it looked like it was all wide open. And then Ace came out with this diatribe, and I'm not going to get into it and do a reaction on it because, quite frankly, there's a lot of content streams out there that have noticed my methods of delivery and when it comes to reacting to stories, and some other shows that might have picked up on that as well. And they've decided to sort of emulate that, so they've taken the easy route by reacting to these stories. So since I sort of created that, I'm not going to take the easy route by reacting to that story. But the point in this matter is that after Ace and Gene got in this feud, Ace made some accusations toward Gene, saying that there were accusations made towards Gene. And at the end of the day, I felt like it almost brought a little bit of a dark cloud over the End of the Road tour, at least the debut of it, because it felt like troubled waters. Things were looking so good in the world of Kiss. Ace Frehley announced a random West Coast sort of tour run where he was doing Portland and doing all these surrounding cities around Vancouver, and there was 4 days of rest right before the Kiss show. So Ace could have potentially come out and done this. Then Ace came out and lashed out. So not only that, but the accusations were also shining a bit of a negative light. So I don't exactly like what this has done for the tour. I don't exactly like what this has done for the energy and sort of what's supposed to be the happiness surrounding the tour. And I will say that as a fan, now I don't know the man personally. Just because you meet someone, it doesn't mean you know them. And I would never be under the impression that I know someone because I meet them. But it seemed to me like Gene was a little bit, something was on his mind during this performance. That is something that I will say. And I feel like the Ace thing could have contributed to that because they are not very good accusations. So interesting to factor that in. That was also part of my discussion when I first landed. And, it was a bit of a shame. I didn't really want that to be part of my discussion. But nonetheless, we were very excited to see what they were going to do for the set list and everything like that. So fast forward to the night of the show. As I mentioned, the opener for the show was David Garibaldi, who I just had on the Cassius Morris show. The interview is up on my channel right now. The first interview, period, from the End of the Road World Tour. And, this was a really interesting performance. I was in a very unique circumstance because I got the chance to actually sit down with David before his performance, and he sort of mapped it out for me, as you can see on camera, and sort of gave me the parameters of what he was going for on stage and what exactly his performance art was. And part of our discussion was the fact that it's often difficult for people to grasp what performance painting is. And, he found it difficult to explain at times as well. And he also discussed how he likes that challenge, and he really relishes in that. So what I got to watch was somebody who was very determined, a performer who went on stage with a fire and a passion. And if there was anybody in the audience who was doubting, David had the ambition to turn them around. And I think that he had an overwhelmingly positive reaction from the audience. Like I said in the interview, people have to understand that typically somebody's expecting potentially even a co-headlining bill with a rock band of equal caliber, let's say Motley Crue or Judas Priest, or at least some sort of rock band that they've never heard of. So to be bringing a performance painter on the road and having it be so good, so vibrant, and so appropriate for the event, I find really, really interesting. I frankly wasn't sure how this was going to go. I wasn't familiar with David's work in the beginning, but once I became familiar with his work and his charity, his humanitarian efforts, I'm 100% behind it, and I think that this is a really, really cool and unique choice for the first 10 days of the End of the Road tour. I think that it's going to help this tour be remembered as something that's incredibly unique, and that is what this show really was for me, was incredibly unique. After David, it was time for Kiss, and we had our working passes on for David, because we were doing some photography. We had our photo pass. We were backstage for the interview. And one thing that we were asked not to be hanging out backstage. And we completely respected that. I have worked at places, where we do events. I know how it works backstage. We don't want people hanging out in the wings. So I, in a sense, I'm lucky, and I feel grateful that I have that experience because it helps me deal with event staff because I sort of know the way that their mind is working. But we were told that we could come back in through the working entrance once we had went back to put our gear where it needed to be. So when we came back for the event and we came in through the working entrance, we went to go where we needed to go, and the Kiss dressing rooms were right there. And right by the Kiss dressing rooms was a super unique item. A 70s original Kiss pinball machine was backstage at the show. Now, I've been backstage at Kiss 3 different times. I've been given a tour of basically the entire operation. I've never seen in my life, in person, a 70s Kiss pinball machine. Never anywhere, especially backstage at a Kiss show. So, I don't know if this was brought in by the venue. Chances are it's being brought around by Kiss because they're just savage, awesome rock stars who would do something like that and have done things like that since the 70s. But, just being back there and seeing that was so cool. And, I took a little clip of it for my experience video. But after that, I left and I just went out to the photo pit because, again, when you're given an opportunity to go and do coverage, you never want to blow it. You never want to be, going and stepping out of your bounds. You simply just want to make sure you go and do what you need to do. So me standing in the hallways and waiting for Kiss to come out of their dressing room so I can take a Snapchat, is not a nice way to say thank you to the people who gave me the accreditation for the passes. A good way to say thank you is to go and do my experience video, do my interview, do my review, and make sure it's the best that it can be and not play games. That's the thing. If you want to be a fan, you can go be a fan. I could go spend $1,000 on a meet and greet package, hang out with Kiss all day and go sing rock and roll all night in the front row, or I could go do my job. It's very simple. So, it came time for Kiss to come on stage. The flag is dropped, and we hear the hum. The legendary Kiss hum. And in that moment, it's like a weird moment where like your life flashes before your eyes, but you're not going to die. You know what I mean? It's like all the memories of all the times that I met Kiss were just floating through my head. And I look at the clip of myself from the experience video before they went on, and I was just so happy and so excited. I mean, I just couldn't even contain it. And they did the classic, all right, Vancouver, you wanted the best, you got the best, the hottest band in the world, Kiss. And they dropped that flag and they were there. And they revealed that new stage. And that new stage, folks, is looking really, really, really good. First of all, we're going to take a look at some of the visuals right now. They have circular panels up on the top of the stage that are emulating visuals. They also have on the screens, on the video monitors, they had actual classic videos of the group from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which is something that I actually didn't anticipate during the show. I figured they would have probably done some sort of a montage where they would break maybe in between the show, and they would potentially show like a legacy of Kiss, but they actually showed sprinklings of all different eras of Kiss on the screens throughout the entire show. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was a really nice touch. The circular lighting displays were really, really cool too. They tended to show like the icon logos, like sort of the makeup that's on each one of their faces up there, stenciled out. There was also streamers and confetti and pyro in places that I've never actually seen at a Kiss show. In the beginning for Detroit Rock City, there was a crazy, crazy sound, like some insane fireworks were going off. It was a super loud, high-pitched whistling, and there was pyro going on up on the actual ceiling that was sort of removed from the stage. It was above the floor audience, and it was just going around in sort of like a loop/zigzag kind of thing. It was insane. I almost didn't know exactly where to look in terms of the explosions. Now, behind them, behind where Eric was on the drums, there was like a spaceship-like, it looked like a space-like vessel almost. I don't know if it's not a vessel, but it looks like a vessel. And it's full of holes. It's like full of potholes. And each one of those potholes is for different pyrotechnics. I gotta say, the level of pyrotechnics and the colors of the pyrotechnics was certainly amped up and upgraded for this tour. That's one thing that I've noticed about Kiss on the past tours. It's like when they end Deuce and they do that ending pose, it was always a green pyro. Like, you could always just call the color of the pyro and the way it's going to go and how it's going to go. For this show, they really reinvented the pyro. They were actually having some issues with the pyro, is what I read online. They were having issues with one of the pinwheels that was spinning. And I think there was another issue with the pyro as well. But I personally didn't notice it while I was in the audience. Now looking at my videos afterwards, I do notice it. But it seemed to go off without a hitch for the most part during the show. But the pyro and the lighting are really, really of epic proportions. I was reading some things online of people who weren't at the show. And they were watching the videos saying, it's underwhelming. I'm going to tell you, after the amount of concerts, like I said, that I've seen, over 130, there's only so much that you can do. At a certain point, there's only so much that you can do. And after seeing this concert, I feel like Kiss at least attempted to do everything that they could do. And that was the sense that I got in the lighting department and in the pyro department. So they went from Detroit Rock City to Shout It Out Loud. Of course, a classic. At that point, I was just hanging out, fist pumping, enjoying myself. Just thinking about all the times that I'd seen them from the same view. They stuck to it. The one thing that I noticed about Shout It Out Loud was that the background vocals sounded off. It didn't quite sound as good as I thought it could. I thought it was oversaturated. And I thought that it could have been turned down. But listen, it's one of those things where it's the first night of the tour, so things are being tweaked and stuff. But of course, it's my job as a reviewer to point those things out. Another thing I want to mention, Paul is using vocal reinforcements on this tour. And that's one of the things that's been lighting up the internet. And he opened, he's singing and Shout It Out Loud. He's also singing in Detroit Rock City. I want to say my piece about Paul using the vocal reinforcements before we go too much farther into this review. I want to say that I am so happy that they are using enforcements, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, I do want to say that there is a huge segment of people who is upset that they're using vocal reinforcements. And I understand why you guys feel that way. And I had a conversation with one of my closest friends about this. And he was telling me that Kiss has gone around for so many years talking about how they would never even so much as use a backing track for a guitar or the drums live. And now here they are using backing tracks for vocals. Not necessarily backing tracks, but reinforcement tracks or pitch or corrector, whatever they're using. They're using something, and I'm going to tell you guys, it's sounding goddamn good. It's sounding really, really good. They're only using it on Paul's voice, from what I can hear. And from what I can hear, they're turning it off when Paul talks or addresses the audience. So it sounds like he's only really using vocal reinforcements while he's singing. And it sounds, to me, it sounds like the Kiss Rocks Vegas style, that DVD that they did, except it sounds more natural than that. It literally does. It sounds more natural than that live. He's also doing things like cutting out his vocal acrobatics. And that's something that I have championed for him to do for so long. Just, Paul, please cut out the vocal acrobatics. When I say that, I mean things like the introduction to Heaven's on Fire, where he's doing a crazy high-pitched vocal note, and he goes to hit that note nowadays, and he can't hit it. And for so many tours, he was insistent on just going for it. And, now on this tour, he's not. They're just going straight into Heaven's on Fire. And that's what I've been saying for years. Why don't they just go straight into Heaven's on Fire? I think that there was a conversation had where the group and the production team said, listen, we really need to listen to our fans right now. We need to read the message boards. We need to hear what they're saying. And we need to make some changes because the show is not sounding as good as it could. Now, is that a weakness? In my personal opinion, no. I think it's actually a positive thing. the fans are always the first to complain about how it doesn't sound as good as it could when Paul is hitting certain notes. So why don't you let him fix it? It's, for me, Kiss is like a movie. Kiss is an exception to other groups. It's a show. And that's the thing. People say that and they think that you're discounting the music. I don't discount the music. I listen to pretty much only the deep cuts of Kiss. I love Kiss. I'm very familiar with their entire catalog. But nowadays, Kiss is something very different from when it started. Kiss isn't a rough and tough New York street band. That's not what Kiss is. And I understand and appreciate that that's where Kiss's roots came from. But that's not what Kiss is today. Kiss is a performance art. I feel like Kiss is a performance artist, our performance artist, just like David Garibaldi. You know, they are performance artists, portraying and doing a show. And that's why I admire them, because their business mind, their business sense is so cunning. They're here 50 years later, on stage doing this, and they suck you into Kiss world, and next thing you know, you're playing by their rules. Kiss's set continued on strong with Deuce, which is, of course, always a fantastic song in any capacity. I love it live at every Kiss show. And then they went into Say Yeah for song number 4. I gotta say, I think Say Yeah was the wrong choice, period, to even be in the set list. I'm not sure why this song was on it, and I think that this is actually a very overrated song. You know, I used to enjoy, I believe, Sonic Boom, but I don't really enjoy that album very much anymore. There's a couple songs that I like on it, but I don't think that the songs on there are necessarily worthy of being on the Kiss's final tour. You know, it could be argued that they're trying to take a little slice and represent from every single era, but that would have to be true to use that example, because they're not. And that's why I don't think that it flies. I think that if they had a little sample of everything, they could justify throwing it in, and then even put a song from Monster in there. But if you're not going to throw in songs from other classic records, like a deep cut from Dynasty or even a deep cut from Love Gun, why are you going to throw in what's a deep cut, from Sonic Boom? I know it's a single, but it's a deep cut in Kiss's catalog period, even though it's considered a single. So, you know, a lot of people like that, and I'm glad they enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with it, and there's nothing wrong with the band playing it. I'm just saying that I don't think that it should have been in the set list, and that's just my personal opinion. Then they went into Heaven's on Fire. Like I said, I love that they just went straight into it. You know, we don't need the vocal acrobatics in the beginning. They're just singing it. And Paul, for this one, sounded really, really, really good. He almost sounded like 90s Paul Stanley. And I know that that's could sound like a little bit of a stretch, but the vocal reinforcements are fuego. They sound really, really good. I'm telling you guys, don't hate on it. And I know that people have all these expectations, but you got to remember what it's for. It's for you. It's for you as the audience member to sit there and say, wow, not only am I seeing something amazing, everything I'm hearing is sounding amazing as well. From there, Kiss went into War Machine. And Heaven's on Fire, they didn't really have too many stage visuals. I think Heaven's on Fire, they had the least of that. It was almost not as entertaining for the lighting and the visuals for that song. But they really kicked it up a notch for the entire rest of the show, starting with War Machine. And they had like these Call of Duty Black Ops 4 style animations up on the screens. And it was like bullets flying, and there was army guys and Kiss makeup, and that's really when the top circles, all the panels, circle panels, started coming alive with all these vibrant designs. And I thought it was just awesome. You know, they incorporated some of the old animations that they used, as well as the new animations. So I thought it was just really, really cool. From there, they went into Lick It Up, and, you know, I tend to prefer Lick It Up towards the end of the set. I think they might have changed it because that's a pretty goddamn tiring song to play, especially when they're doing the longer rendition with Won't Get Fooled Again, which I'm glad that they kept. That looked incredible with the stage visuals that they did. And I believe that they had the drum riser out with the Cats at that point in time. Or maybe not. They brought out Eric on a couple of different risers. And I'm not sure how people feel about that. With the risers, with the Cats on it, the Kiss Alive 2. I'm not entirely sure how to feel about that either, especially since Peter Criss may not be represented on this tour himself. But it did look cool. It's very, very visually pleasing. Next up was 100,000 Years. There's a lot of debate as well on whether or not that should be in the set in the Kiss community, because on Kiss Alive, it's a 12-minute song. You know, it ends up being a very long rendition. In my personal opinion, I think it absolutely should be in the set. I think it's a quintessential Kiss classic. And I think it makes every concert better when they play that live. I haven't seen them play that, I don't think, since the first concert that I saw them. And it really kicked it up a notch. The whole "Do You Feel Alright" stuff with the fire, that's absolute classic, quintessential Kiss. And I really love that. So I was glad that they played that and they kept it in the set. The drum solo, of course, was insane. Eric Singer, incredible percussionist, one of the best, period, in the business. And he's using his new Attack drum heads, by the way, which sound so good. His drums have this bounce to them. And this ring, the ring of his drums, everything. There's the way that they hit sounds so good. I believe he's still playing Pearl drums, but he's using Attack drum heads. And whatever he's doing there, it sounds really good. So props to the solo there. Then they moved into the Gene segment with the blood spitting and the flying. And they actually did it different this time. They had Gene up on a platform and they brought him up on one of the circular platforms. So that I thought was cool. One of the circular platforms came down. One of the members of the show interacted with one of the members of the animations on the ceiling, and essentially the two became one and they intertwined. I thought it was really, really cool. Gene was up in front of all the circular panels on his own, and then on all of these circular panels, there was nearly a dozen, if not just a little bit more, was Gene's face. And it was a crazy animation of Gene's face, all in the circles. But I believe it was live. It was somehow from the live camera feed of when he was performing right there in Vancouver. So I'm honestly not sure how the hell they did this, but you can see it in my experience video. This was probably the highlight of the show. The visuals during God of Thunder were absolutely ridiculous. And the way that they did this animation with the live action, I really have no clue how they did it. But it was incredible. And, I saw a video of Gene when he was first reacting to this stage. And he looked like a kid in a candy store. And now I know why. Gene always grew up looking up to, Dracula and, the Wolfman and, all these horror icons. And he always wanted to be sort of, one of these horror icons. And, when I saw that, I was saying, this really cemented his legacy. And this is, his legacy has been cemented. And he achieved that goal that he had as a kid before he'd even come to the United States and learn how to speak English. So, all these thoughts are going through my head at Kiss shows because, again, I know a lot about Kiss. And Kiss is deeper to me than probably it is for most people. I'm not just going to hear shout it out loud. This band matters to me. And they're awesome. Not to get corny with it, but it's been in my life for a long time. Next, they went into Cold Gin. And that was when I had that weird little confrontation with that guy who was harassing me in the audience. And it's funny because he tried to get security about it as well, and then they told him to leave me alone because I was fully within my rights. So that sort of killed the vibe for Cold Gin. So it brought my energy down, but it made me more attentive. So I actually got to just stand there and just listen to the music. Again, there was a lot less going on visually with the lights. It was sort of just green lighting on the stage at that point. So I really just got to take it in, and they just seemed to have a lot of fun performing Cold Gin. They did a guitar solo afterwards. They rocked it, and one thing that I noticed is that Gene and Tommy had some really, really great onstage stage presence together. They had the charisma back and forth. They were looking at each other, and they seemed to actually really like to be in each other's presence and performing together. The one thing that I did notice about Gene and Paul is that I don't think I saw Gene and Paul actually look at one another and or like interact with one another while performing once through this entire show. I literally don't think that I saw it one single time. There are rumors that Gene and Paul do not get along, and that is to the point where they won't be together at this point. I'm talking backstage. And I don't know if that's true, but let me tell you, it certainly wouldn't surprise me, because there did not seem to be any charisma or chemistry. That's the word. Was I saying charisma? I'm jet lagged. I'm sorry, folks. There does not seem to be any chemistry between Gene and Paul on stage right now. And I don't know what's going on. Like I said, I don't know if something's going on behind the scenes. But that was something interesting that I found worth noting. So they went from Cold Gin into Psycho Circus. And Psycho Circus, I thought, was fantastic. They showed the 1998 carnival style visuals up on the TVs. And it really took me back to 98 when I was a damn unborn baby, or a born baby at that point. But, you know, I never got to see that tour. And this sort of made me feel like I got to see it for one show. They kicked up the pyro a lot. There was fire coming out of all sides of the stage for this one. Psycho Circus actually might have been my favorite point visually in the entire show. They had this purple hue, this purple lighting that was going across the entire stage. And everybody really gets into that one live. You know, it has a really, really nice build-up. So I think that was a really awesome call. And, you know, Kiss realized the last couple of years that there's something to Psycho Circus, and the diehard fans, they actually like that song. And, you know, it's not a deep cut, but it's a song that not everybody knows. So I think it's good for them to throw that in. A song that everybody does know, I Love It Loud, they did. Of course, that one went normal. I would have liked to see the crowd chant more, a little bit more crowd participation, because honestly, the crowd was a little bit dead in the sleep. I think it's one of those things where they were just really amazed to see Kiss, I think. And since it was the first show, I think people were sort of on edge and just really wanting to take everything in and not be sort of going too crazy, and to be more observant. I also heard that there was a rumor that Ace Frehley and or Peter Criss were in the building that night. So I think a lot of people, like, I didn't believe that at all because I knew it wasn't true. But I think a lot of people, that sort of got into their heads, and they didn't want to miss anything, so to speak. So I think that goes farther than people could expect. Hide Your Heart was a song that I don't think I've ever seen live. And again, it puts a smile on my face just talking about it. Seeing that live was so cool. I know that they've been playing that live for a couple of years now, but that's a deeper cut that I'm glad that they threw in. Again, though, I would have liked to see some deeper cuts in this. Like when I saw the fake set list with the Oath on it, I didn't even think that was that outlandish. You know, I think that they could have definitely played the Oath because this is their final tour and there's a lot of people that want to hear it. But Hide Your Heart was really, really good. And, you know, I think that it set a pretty good mid-pace tone for that point in the show. Next up was Let Me Go Rock and Roll. You know, I'm a particular guy with my Kiss. There's certain songs that I just don't like at certain points in the set. And I prefer Let Me Go Rock and Roll to be earlier in the set. But again, it was sort of cool after some more recent Kiss songs. We had some 80s, some 90s, to have some of that 70s thrown back in. So I thought it was a cool sort of eclectic back and forth. We had Cold Gin right before that set of songs. So it kind of tied us back in and brought us back to where we'd come from. Then at that point, Paul was ready to fly out into the crowd. And this was the part that I was super excited for. Paul really kicked it up a notch with this. He did the whole 1, 2, 3 Paul thing. I'm not coming out unless I'm invited. The whole 9 yards definitely did not disappoint. And we were actually right on the side where he got onto his lift. So I had the third row lower bowl view right in front of Paul Stanley as he got onto his lift to take flight, as you can see in my experience video. And it was really incredible. He built a new platform out above the audience, and it's like the one that he had in Kiss Rocks Vegas, where it's like a little stage that's like a rectangular stage. It's very, very narrow, and it sort of goes long horizontally. And he was walking across it, strutting across it, waving. He stayed out there and did the whole song, and there was lasers all surrounding it. I thought that was something really cool. And almost all recent Kiss shows, and probably in the last 10 years, there was always just a stage at the back with lights on it, which was really, really cool. Paul got to fly out. But again, it's good that they're making new developments and advancements and going ahead and adding new things to their stage set. Next, Paul Stanley and them went into I Was Made for Lovin' You with Paul over the crowd, which I thought was out of place. It's always been Love Gun and Black Diamond, and it's one of those things where, for me personally, unless you're doing like a crazy, obscure set and you're switching things up like that, I don't think there's need to make small changes like that. Like, if we're gonna just do it standard, let's do it standard, and if not, then let's not do it. But they did I Was Made for Lovin' You in between Black Diamond, which I thought, again, was an odd order. But the crowd started going crazy. The crowd loved it. I Was Made for Lovin' You is a quintessential crowd pleaser. And Kiss, again, I admire Kiss's business mind so much. They're so business savvy. When they're constructing a set list, they are constructing it for their top members of their demographic and nobody else. It's majority rules with Kiss or hit the goddamn highway. There's no compromising. Don't want no compromise. That's what they say. I think it's awesome. I think it's tremendous. And, that's the way I would be running it and do run it in an operation. Black Diamond came around, and Paul Stanley was doing his solo. Again, brought back a lot of memories of just watching all the Kiss concert DVDs, wishing I could have been there while Paul was doing his solo. And now here I am, front row, essentially, watching this, and in another city and everything, just feeling grateful, feeling very, very grateful. And they slammed into Black Diamond, and man, it was one of the most powerful performances of the night. Eric Singer sounded fantastic singing on the drums, and they just really belted it out and went crazy. That's one of the songs that they always seem to have fun doing live. Still at this point, no eye contact really between Gene and Paul that I noticed. And really no chemistry on stage between the two of them. I don't know what was going on there. But they stood next to each other when they came to do the solo. That was about it. At that point, also, Eric Singer went up on the Cat drum lift, and that was very, very cool. Again, I wasn't sure exactly how to feel about it, but I think it's cool. If you're going to be bringing in all the visuals of the classic Kiss, why don't you bring in, some extra stuff that was back there? And speaking of extra stuff, they had the appearance of Gene's serpent on stage for the first time in many, many years. And I thought that was so cool. That was unexpected. So far, I got to see the serpent and the 70s Kiss pinball machine. So I got to see some iconic pieces of Kiss memorabilia. And I'm so glad that that's back. Somebody actually was also asking in a YouTube comment one day what happened to the Kiss Alive candles that they had on the Kiss Alive album cover. And I think it would be so cool if they actually brought some candles on stage, since they have the serpent, whatever its name is. I think that would just be a really, really nice touch. That's just something that I could add as well. Next was Beth for the encore. Now, Beth was very interesting. I believe for the first time since the symphony, and I believe Unplugged, a piano was used in a Kiss set. Eric Singer was brought up on a riser, playing a silver, almost looked like a disco ball encrusted piano. And I gotta tell you, I'm not sure if he was actually playing the piano. And I love Eric, and he knows that. and he's a great musician. I just couldn't tell if he was actually playing the piano is all. And there's nothing wrong with it if he wasn't. But it was just interesting that I was questioning it. I wasn't sure. But he was singing Beth, and he was singing it really, really well, so I can understand that if you aren't a professional piano player, it can get difficult maybe to play the piano while singing. But, you know, I thought it was good. I thought that it was a little excuse me, I thought it was a little much when the band came and they got around the piano for Me and the Boys Are Going to Be Playing All Night. They came out from backstage and they all gathered around. I think it looked a little too forced, a little too rehearsed. But again, that's one of those things. They'll decide whether or not they want to keep that as they work out the kinks. It's really not an issue. You know, I look at my bands like a sports team. You know, I look at all these things like stats and I just really tally it up. And it doesn't make me like or dislike them more or less at the end of the day. It's simply just observations that are being made about the event. But yeah, Beth was something that I can understand why a lot of people would get stirred up about, because for a Kiss purist who isn't behind the makeup and, you know, who isn't okay with the new stuff, which I am completely okay with the new stuff. I love it. I was in attendance. It can be a lot for them. I tend to understand that. Do You Love Me was the next song that they played. I thought this was really good. I actually saw Keith LaRue down in the photo pit taking some pictures. He was singing. He looked like he was having a ball. And, you know, it was just kind of a carefree, it seemed like a little break for the band to just get to play a light kind of song and just hang out, and they seemed to really enjoy it and have some fun. Gene seemed to be having a little bit more fun at that point too. He seemed tired tonight, like I said. It was the first show of the tour, but like I said, I know Gene's got some stuff going on right now, so who really knows what's happening. From there, they moved into Rock and Roll All Night to end off the show, and ending off the show was something really, really, really special. So the last couple years, Gene and Tommy have gone up on each of their designated sides and gotten up on a lift. And the lift traditionally takes them over the audience, often like anywhere from 9 to 12 rows out above the floor audience. So they'd be on a platform elevated over them. This tour, they had a platform which elevated Gene and Tommy from either side up, all the way up to the top of the arena, and they did a full circle to the back of the lower bowl, all the way around, and then all the way to the back to the front of the bowl, all the way over my head. Like I said, I was in the very, very front, stage left, third row, and Tommy was all the way at the back and ended up over my head. It was incredible. It was really, really incredible. It was probably the farthest I've seen Kiss go with it for Rock and Roll All Night. It was actually incredibly impressive that they're able to even pull this shit off. You know, I've been a Kiss fan for a long time. I've seen all their tricks, but this is really impressive. You know, like this, and that's why when I see these people making these comments, saying, "Oh, you know, I don't like the show. It's underwhelming," and all these things. I don't understand that, because to me, I was there, and it looks like it's just an incredible show, especially if we're talking about the visuals. So, you know, I guess my to sum up my thoughts on the Kiss End of the Road World Tour opening in Vancouver, this is a show that I would highly recommend for anybody who likes Kiss. This is also a show that I would recommend to people who have veered away from Kiss, potentially due to some of the issues with some of the performances or whatever it may be, maybe some of the drama that's been going back and forth and circulating about the band. What I will say is this: the band is sounding better than ever. Paul sounds great. He's singing. He has his reinforcements. He has whatever he has, and it sounds really good. I'm a fan of it. I think you should keep using it. And, you know, if you were turned off by the band's back and forth in the news or anything, this is their final tour. So I would definitely recommend going and see this, even if you have an inkling of interest in Kiss. You know, I've seen this this is my fifth Kiss show now. in terms of rankings, this is might be the best sounding Kiss show that I've ever seen. So to give you from the past 10 years, that should be saying something. As a whole package, I think I'm going to give this show a 3.5 out of 5. I think it was very, very strong. I think the lighting and the visuals in the show are, like I said, probably better than they have been at any point in the last 10 years. They're pushing boundaries. They're doing new animations that I've really never seen before, and I'm a huge, huge fan of it. I do think that there needs to be some more focus on the fact that this is Kiss's final tour. It doesn't feel like they're doing a roundup or a wrap-up of their career or of their music or of anything like that. It more so just feels like a really, really good normal Kiss concert. That's like fantastic, better than average Kiss concert that they put a lot of work into. But it doesn't quite feel like that big bang, essentially, that I expected for the farewell. It doesn't feel farewell focused. It just seems to be focused on delivering a fantastic experience, which is something that they did deliver. But, maybe my expectations were too high going into, the first show. Don't get me wrong, I'm not disappointed. I get people messaging me after these concert reviews when I give a 3.5 saying you sound so disappointed. I'm not disappointed at all. I had a fantastic time. But you have to be fair when you do these reviews. So that's my take on it. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more content. Follow me on Instagram at CassiusMorris_, Twitter at CassiusMorris, and Facebook.com/CassiusShow. Check you on the next video.